This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show. I'm Duran Martinez, in for one more hour as we roll you through this Tuesday today. 7 minutes after the top of the hour. Got to check in some of the headlines making news today. Michigan Governor Rick Snyder is asking the Obama administration for a full review of security clearances for refugees who could be placed in Michigan. Snyder's office released a letter that was sent Monday to Secretary of State John Kerry as the head of Homeland Security after the attacks in Paris and Beirut. Governor says he's unwavering in welcoming refugees to Michigan, but adds that his first priority is keeping people safe. Then don't let them in. If safety is a concern, we don't have intel on these people wanting to seek refuge in our state, in our country. Don't let them in. Am I being difficult? Am I being too harsh on this group that comes from a region that is known for some of the problems, a lot of the problems we're having right now? I don't think so. 888-900-9966. At an event in suburban Detroit, the governor told reporters that he wants to ensure that terrorists are not part of the refugee process. On Sunday, a day earlier, the governor said that the state is postponing efforts to accept refugees. 27 governors in the U.S. do not want them in their state. But the land of pot and honey, Colorado, John Hickenlooper, opening them with open arms. Nobody's told me yet. Nobody has given me information if there is a financial benefit or an increase in jobs or an increase in tax revenue from allowing these people in the state. 888-900-9966. I'm sure there's people out there that know better than I if there is a benefit to allowing them in Michigan or the country in general. I'm not saying throw up a fence and barbed wire around the country yet. But this is, after the attacks in Paris, the attacks in Beirut, where it would seem that one of the terrorists came in on false credentials in the Paris bombings. That would be a concern to me. 888-900-9966, the Steve Gruber Show. Find us on Facebook if you would like. Love to have you on there. Detroit police officer has been wounded during a shootout with a man following a high-speed chase on the city's east side. Police say the officer suffered a grazing wound to his leg at about 10:20 a.m. yesterday. A suspect was shot several times. Second officer was also hurt. Chief James Craig told reporters that the suspect sped off after the officers saw him trying to hide a handgun in a vehicle. The man stopped the car after a short chase and shot at the officers. The officers then returned fire. Both officers and the suspect were taken to an area hospital for treatment. A woman who was in the car before the chase and shooting ran off. She was later arrested. Detroit area doctor who hurt patients and cheated insurers through fraudulent spinal surgery says he'll stick to his guilty plea. Dr. Arya Sabit returned to federal court on Monday, 6 weeks after a judge rejected a plea deal that would likely have put him in prison for 9 years to 11 years. Sabit's guilty plea now comes without a formal deal with prosecutors. It means that the judge, Paul Borman, will have more discretion in sentencing him. Sabit pleaded guilty to fraud, acknowledging that he performed unnecessary or improper surgeries that caused serious injury. He said that he also got kickbacks in Ventura, California, for using certain implants. Sabit moved to Detroit area in 2011 while he was under investigation by regulators in California. So you're under investigation and you run off to Michigan. And getting kickbacks from a company for using their product. Do you think maybe the product should be investigated as well? 888-900-9966, the number to get on board with the Steve Gruber Show this morning. Greek authorities say at least 9 people, including 4 women, 4 children, are the latest casualties among migrants or refugees trying to cross into Greece on flimsy boats in the eastern Aegean Sea. Greece says their plastic boat overturned near the island of Kos. The Coast Guard says it rescued 7 people and located 9 bodies. Police have released 2 photos of a suspect in the fatal shooting of the pregnant wife of an Indianapolis pastor as they hope to draw tips from the public. The photos taken from a home surveillance video show a person walking in the neighborhood where 28-year-old Amanda Blackburn was killed. Police revealed that they had footage Friday, but did not release the images until Monday. More than 2,000 people attended a memorial for Blackburn on Sunday in nearby Whitestown. It was coordinated by 4 churches, including the Resident Church in Indianapolis, where her husband is a pastor, and a church in South Carolina where the couple belonged before moving in 2012 to found the Resident Church. Blackburn died Wednesday at a hospital after the shooting Tuesday morning. She recently announced that she was pregnant. Coast Guard in Alaska is concerned that the rise in ship traffic through the environmentally sensitive Bering Strait will increase the chances of a vessel crashing and leaking oil. More Arctic sea ice melting each summer from global warming, so they say, is making it easier for ships to plot routes through the strait. Not too convinced on the global warming issue either. Makes for good news, though, right? 888-900-9966. And if you're a snowboarder, don't think about going to Utah. An appellate court in Denver is scheduled to hear today from a group of snowboarders who argue that a ban on their sport at Utah's Alta ski area amounts to discrimination. Alta ski area east of Salt Lake City is one of 3 resorts that still ban snowboarding. The snowboarders filed an appeal after the case was dismissed last year by a federal judge in Utah who said snowboarders don't have a constitutional right to practice their sport. If the land is privately owned, private ownership has the ability to say what type of activity takes place on said properties. If they were owned by the local government, maybe a different story. Snowboarders. I'm kidding, snowboarders. Steve Gruber Show, 14 minutes after the top of the hour on the Michigan Talk Network.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty. Filling in for Steve Gruber, here is Duran Martinez.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show, 888-900-9966. Would love to have you join the conversation today. Getting all fired up, man. Why is it towards the end of the show I'm awake, I'm ready to go? Brought to you by Mesa, good health, good business, and great schools. Joining us on the phone right now, Herb London is with the London Center for Policy Research. And foreign policy, something very important, something that we have not seen a very forward-thinking motion on this. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We have issues. We have policy issues with foreign policy, the international conflicts, national defense, a lot of things going on right now, and we seem to be sitting back.
Well, part of the difficulty is that the president has been unable to really develop a plan for the Middle East. My own feeling is that if we did have a strategy, we'd be able to defeat ISIS. Without a strategy, it's impossible. If you fly 7 sorties a day, which compared to what we were doing when we were in Iraq of 750 sorties a day, you could see that the war is not being fought in any sensible fashion. And it's also clear that when it comes to logistics and the help for the Peshmerga that want to fight, we're not providing the equipment, the military aid that they need in order to fight effectively. So I think we put ourselves in a rather odd position. It is interesting that people talk about an environment that does not have targets. Yet, interestingly, the French came in yesterday and were bombing targets in Syria. Well, how come they can find targets that were really provided by the United States intelligence? How can they use those targets and we're not? So I think there are a lot of questions that have to be raised about the way in which we're conducting ourselves during the course of this war.
You know, you have an organization that is producing $1 million a day through black market oil. So they're funding, and you know, it's funny. I was watching one of the candidates yesterday. It says, how do you hurt them? You blow up their oil fields, take over the place. 2 months later, Exxon comes in, and you've seen those guys put an oil field together. And look, it just seems too easy to think that way.
Well, first of all, the oil field should be destroyed. I mean, obviously, this is the source of hard currency for the ISIS group. But I think it is very important to understand that it's not simply the oil fields. It's a question of seizing all of their assets on the world stage, doing what is necessary to take apart this organization. After all, ISIS was created as a function of the Sunni militias that were a counterweight to the Shia militias during the Iraq War. And they have morphed into this organization. Why did they morph into this organization? Because there wasn't any opposition. The Joint Forces Agreement that the United States would have permitted the United States to maintain 10,000 troops in Iraq, of course, was never signed. So we didn't leave any troops there. That was a mistake. The second thing that happened is the Iraqi army was supposedly going to be the counterforce against any kind of ISIS development. And what you have is an Iraqi army that puts down its arms and runs away as soon as they face an enemy in battle. So you don't really have a battle. You don't really have any opposition. In fact, what has happened is ISIS has managed to move through Syria and Iraq largely unopposed. So people say, well, they've done remarkable things. They haven't done anything quite remarkable because they haven't faced any serious opposition. If the United States were to say, we're going to change our rules of engagement and we will kill the enemy, recognizing the fact there's likely to be collateral damage, which the president has insisted cannot occur, we can win this war, and we can win the war through the air. We don't have to send in 250,000 troops. But we're not fighting this war, an air war. We're not fighting the war in any sensible way through the Peshmerga or the people who would be our boots on the ground.
Speaking with Herb London from the London Center, londoncenter.org is their website. And when you have a military that is trained, that has signed up for these actions to protect and to engage the enemy, and we're not using a military to do such a thing. We have an administration that is going on campaign promises to stay out of it.
Well, the
it's
president
difficult.
is using the words destroy and degrade. But obviously that's not occurring. We have not contained ISIS, as the events in Paris would suggest. And it's not merely the events in Paris. They took down a Russian aircraft in Sinai. We have the bombings that have occurred in Lebanon. They've expanded their reach largely because, as I said, they are not facing any serious opposition. Not yet, anyway. Maybe these events in Paris will so alarm officials around the world that the United States will lead a force that is capable of dealing with the ISIS threat. But it's very important to understand, at this point, the United States really has given them a relative free ride.
Absolutely. Joining us on the show here today, Herb London, londoncenter.org, if you'd like to read up on some of their the policy issues that they're working on right now. It just boggles the mind that common sense would say, you know, we've had attacks. We have put ourselves as the world's police force, and now we're backing out of that, even when we're being asked for help.
Well, one of the things that I think is clear is that on the international stage, just as in nature, there's no such thing as a vacuum. We created a vacuum through our policy of withdrawal. The president believes the United States' involvement in world affairs has always led to negative results. As a consequence, He started his presidency with the understanding is I'm going to leave Iraq, I'm going to leave Afghanistan, I'm going to withdraw American troops. We have no business in this part of the world. Let those people stew in their own juices. Not going to stew in their own juices. Let Iran be the nation that is a stabilizing influence in that part of the world, which is really the basic manifestation of the Iran deal on nuclear weapons. So you have a policy perspective from the Obama administration that has been consistent, but it is consistently wrong and misguided in large part because it doesn't recognize the threats as they're emerging, and they are changing and evolving. And so the administration's position remains static, but the conditions in the world are not staying the same. They're dynamic. As a consequence, the administration is incapable of recognizing what kind of actions are necessary in order to deal with the enemy.
Herb London, appreciate your time here joining us on the Steve Gruber Show. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. LondonCenter.org. Make sure you check him out as we move through this Tuesday. We got more coming your way. We will take your calls when we come back. 888-900-9966 to join the conversation here on the Steve Gruber Show on the Michigan Talk Network.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day. Filling in for Steve Gruber, here's Duran Martinez.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show, 27 minutes away from the top of the hour. 888-900-9966. Andrew W. Herrman, past president of the American Society of Civil Engineers and principal with Hardesty and Hanover LLP, joins us right now. Michigan getting a D grade for its infrastructure. Transportation impacts every American. America's roads and transit systems both received D grades, so I guess we're on course with the national average. Bridges receiving a C plus grade according to the American Society of Civil Engineers. And Andy, if I may call you that, or unless you prefer Andrew.
Andy is fine.
Andy,
good morning.
Good. How are you, sir? Look, it doesn't take an engineer to visibly see what's wrong with our bridges, our roads, and but maybe there's more to it than the naked eye of the average driver.
Well, definitely. I mean, ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineers, does give grades, letter grades to their roads and our bridges and our transit systems. But we also take a look a little bit deeper to what it's actually costing the motorist to drive over these deficient bridges. Michigan motorists pay an extra $539 per year driving on roads that are in need and repair. That's extra maintenance, repairs to their cars. That's a lot of money, $539 a year. If you increase the gas tax by just 10 cents a gallon, the average driver would pay only $50 a year. And you could be using that money to really improve and cut down on that huge cost you're paying for auto repair.
But let's take into consideration which Michigan has already one of the highest gas taxes in the country. Adding 10 cents to that really kind of really adds to our problem. But I agree, something has to be done.
Well, basically, we have to invest in our infrastructure. The roads and the bridges, they wear out. People don't realize that they have a life, and they have to be maintained to preserve that life and increase it. And a lot of people take the attitude that, well, we paid for it initially. Why do we have to pay for it again when they don't realize that if you don't maintain it, it's not going to last? It's like your roof. If you start getting a small leak in your roof and you don't do anything quickly, pretty soon you may have to replace the entire roof. You have to do that maintenance every year to keep it in good shape.
Absolutely, and we're being joined today. Andy Herrman is joining us here talking about the infrastructure. What about our modes of transportation? We're lacking in mass transit that goes for commuters in the state as well.
Well, the mass transit is one way to take cars off the roads, and it actually helps. So the investment in mass transit is a definite plus for maintaining the roads and bridges, because you're starting to take a number of cars off and starting to take some of the wear and tear off.
Now, would there be any kind of any benefits to having more mass transit trains here in the state? Mind you, you're taking cars off the roads, but you're probably also losing some of the gas tax revenues. Can that be made up with the investment of mass transit?
Well, you really have to look at each location where you want to propose mass transit. You have to make sure you've got the right group of motorists and the need to go from one area to the other. It definitely has to be planned out to balance the mass transit with normal cars and trucks. And trucks basically are the heavy loads that really beat up the roads and bridges. The cars are a lot lighter. They don't provide as much damage to the bridges as, say, a truck.
Speaking with Andy Herrman here, what could be maybe some solutions aside from gas tax? Are there any other solutions aside from raising an already rather large gas tax here in the state?
A number of states have come in with putting toll facilities on roads or bridges, or leasing them out to private facilities to run them. The state of Indiana, close to you, did that to their toll road. Virginia does a number of toll roads. But they all have one thing in common. You need something to support it. So the tolls are what's supporting either the construction or the maintenance or the repairs. Other things that have been, general sales taxes have been used. Bond issues have been used in the past. But it all comes down to money. You have to have money to do the repairs and improvements to the infrastructure.
Speaking with Andy Herrman from the past president, of American Society of Civil Engineers and principal with Hardesty and Hanover. One last question I'm going to ask you, Andy. The way we maintain our roads here in Michigan, we use salt, which is probably the least expensive. And I've come up through Indiana and Ohio where they use like a spray chemical on there. Are there other solutions to maybe maintaining through the winter months that are better fit for our state?
Duran, you're very right about salt. You find a lot of salt usage in the Northeast, and it really wreaks havoc on the steel bridges and on the concrete itself. When salty water gets into the concrete, it gets to the reinforcing bars, and when steel rusts, it expands like 7 times its normal volume. That's why you get the pop-outs and the potholes on the bridges, because it's the steel expanding, pushing up. And also it accelerates the deterioration of the steel. So trying to get away from that salt-based de-icing agents is very good to preserving the life of bridges. And as you said, in other states, they have different sprays, different formulations to do that. So that would be a way to preserve the bridges.
All right, Andy Herrman, I appreciate your time here on the show today.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Maybe there's some words of wisdom there. I mean, look, we understand the salt is probably the cheapest method to de-icing the roads, but at what expense? At what expense are we saving money by treating them with salt, but then having to fix them sooner and patch them, and then that being in turn turned into work on our vehicles and parts and things like that, which, again, creates jobs and revenue. So, I don't know. There's so many facets to this. Going to go to Mike in East Lansing, listening on The Big Talker, 1240 WJIM, the flagship station of the Steve Gruber Show. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good morning, Rand. Nice conversation. My question is, where does the dollars go that we're already collecting from the gas tax and license fees and license plates and so on and so forth? Is that going 100% to fix the roads? Or are they taking some of that? That would seem to make the most sense to me. You collect it from the people who are using it, and that should all go towards the roads and not be diverted to other things like helping out Detroit or taking care of the sick, lame, and lazy through welfare. I just don't understand that. The solution is always to raise and take more rather than cut and shift. And I just don't understand why it's a constant go after the taxpayer and into my pocketbook and everybody else's pocketbook.
Mike, that's a great question. I mean, we just heard Andy say that the salt. I mean, we know it's a temporary fix, but it causes problems down the road. Is there a way to maybe invest a little bit of money to save money down the road in a long-term fix because what is the salt is doing to the bridges. I mean, I'm glad he said what he said about the steel expanding, because believe me, that never came into play. But now every time I look at a bridge, I'll understand that. Mike, great call in Lansing. Thank you so much for joining us. 888-900-9966. If you don't learn something, it's a wasted show. It's the Steve Gruber Show with the Michigan Talk Network.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
It's not a government show. Truth and honesty. I like that. Common sense. God, love that as well. I'm Duran Martinez. Welcome to the Steve Gruber Show. Winding down this Tuesday, 15 minutes away from the top of the hour. 888-900-9966 if you would like to join the conversation today. And I really liked what Andy Herrman had to say, because I liked learning why. And again, it's, I guess, a common sense issue when you take into consideration what's going to happen with the salt when it seeps through the porous surface of concrete. The salt, the water penetrates, gets into the iron bars, the rebar that is being used as part of the structure of the bridge. It rusts, it expands, and pops out that concrete that is supposed to be in place, okay, because of the expansion. And just basic laws of chemical reaction. When you have a metal and a liquid coming together, it's going to rust. It's going to give, and again, it makes perfect sense. And you know, I guess I never really thought of it that way before, but there has to be a way to treat our roads in a way that's it's going to be better. Salt has been the cheapest, and I think the cheapest, fastest fix for our roads, but long term, probably not the best. So is there a way? Do you know of a way? Does anyone know what Ohio and Indiana are doing on their roads? Would love to hear the conversation. 888-900-9966. We are coming towards the holiday season here. And what to buy? Well, books are always a good gift. Amazon editorial director Sarah Nelson joining us right now. Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Books on the list. What will be the hot books this year? I am not a book guy, but I know people that like to read that can sit still long enough and read, be it an ebook or an actual book. What is making the list?
Well, our very favorite book of the year is a novel called Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. It's a novel about 2 points of view on a marriage, the man's and the woman's, and it's really resonating with our readers. Our editors loved it. It's not a he said, she said. It's not like a sitcom. It's a very, complex and kind of angry book about marriage and about how well people may get along, and even so, how many secrets they keep from each other. But we had a lot of other books on the list. There's a wonderful memoir called H is for Hawk, which even if you're not really a book guy, if you're at all interested in nature and really sort of dealing with power issues, which maybe is the subject for a lot of people. This is a book about a woman who learned to deal with her grief over the death of her father by training a hawk. And she's a falconer. So there's a lot of science and a lot of nature, as well as a lot of sort of human experience.
That I kind of like that how that all goes together, being an outdoorsman myself, how that focus to train an animal so smart and so gifted with its natural abilities, how that can really take the time and kind of keep your mind off of things without taking it away completely.
Right. I mean, that's the beauty of this book. I mean, it's really, I am not a particularly a naturalist, and I don't know a lot about birds, and certainly not training them. But there's sort of something for everyone in this book because it's very human, but it also has a lot to do with the natural world and the science of training an animal.
Sarah Nelson joins us here on the Steve Gruber Show. I know you have a short time, so I'll ask you real quickly, how do books get picked for your best lists?
We read a lot, and then we read some more. I've got a team of 6. We read all year long. They find the 10 best books of the month every month, and then the best books in specific categories like business or cookbooks or mystery, thriller, or romance. And then at the end of the year, we sit down with our list from all year and sort of winnow that down to 100 and maybe add in things that we missed along the way and we just thought of. And then we scream at each other for hours on the phone and kind of whittle down the list.
Sarah Nelson, is there a website that we can go directly
Absolutely.
to?
Amazon.com/books. We'll take you right there.
Easy enough. Thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it. Getting a few tips about some possibilities for the holiday season. Going to go to Eagle right now. David is joining us on the phone. Good morning, David. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I have a comment about the refugee crisis, bringing Syrian refugees in. I think it's very dangerous. I wouldn't really have a problem with bringing old people in or kids in, but if you're military age, man or woman, you should stay and fight for your country.
Appreciate the call.
The Syrians should fight for their own country.
Absolutely. David, I appreciate your call this morning here on the Steve Gruber Show, 888-900-9966. It's a very touchy subject. Okay, I'm all about helping people, but more so along the lines of helping our own within the borders of the United States. And look, I'm going to take flack for that. I don't care. You know, we have our own veterans. We have our own people that need help. Okay, there are mental health issues that we need to first look at here in our own country. There's many things that we need to look at first within our own borders. I understand we are a nation of immigrants. I get it. But we have problems we need to sort out for ourselves first. My thoughts. Your thoughts, love to hear them. 888-900-9966. This is the Steve Gruber Show on the Michigan Talk Network.